the Southport attacks.
And let me also say to large social media companies and those who run them, violent disorder clearly whipped up online, that is also a crime. It's happening on your premises, and the law must be upheld everywhere.
But what action will be taken is the question. So the Mayor of London says the laws to prevent misinformation circulating online aren't fit for purpose and urgently need reviewing. I think this is Middlesbrough we can see here. He told The Guardian ministers should act very, very quickly to review the Online Safety Act, which would give Ofcom the power to impose big fines on tech companies not up to standard. That's not even in force yet, though it was made law last year. So does the government need emergency powers to temporarily black out social media platforms in moments of crisis like we have seen? Or are the future threats or fines enough? 0207 862 2222 is the number. Yasmin, I'll start with you on this one. Do you think we need these powers?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a difficult one because actually the tech companies are more powerful than any government in the world. They can operate anywhere. And there is this issue of, blacking out is what dictatorships do. And we've seen that happening under authoritarian governments. So all that is in my mind, but I also think that what we witnessed recently, and we're not the only country this has happened in. There have been many other, the January the 6th, riots at Capitol Hill in the United States. Again, it was social media, it was Trump on his social media. And so there are dangers, and I think we have to consider, first of all, this act has been passed and nothing's been done.
It does seem slow.
Very, very slow.
But even if it does come into place, do you think, Charlie, that social media companies are going to take this seriously? Or are they just going to add into the fines, their fines into the sort of their calculations for the year?
I think they're going to have to. I think they're going to have to sit up and listen now. I think, there are too many examples, some that Yasmin's just mentioned, where social media companies just haven't stepped up to the responsibility that they absolutely have. They'll say it's just a platform for free speech, and it is. And it's, that is why I don't think there should be these blackouts, and I don't think it's for governments to sort of decide. Plus, I think the genie's out of the bottle now, because if it's not social media, if it's not Twitter or X, as it now is, it'll be some other form of social media. If it's not social media, you still have to broadcast what's happening on the televisions. That will still bring people out if they've got a particular urge to go onto the streets or do whatever they do. So there will always be alternatives. And I think what is good about social media is obviously that the riots that we've seen has been born about because of the misinformation on social media. But it's also been a platform where people have got their news from, where people, and most people broadly, can, disseminate between what is fake news, what isn't. There was that age-old saying, don't believe everything you read in the papers. We certainly don't believe everything you read on social media.
Well, we've just had Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, and presumably one of the smartest, retweeting a fake story, apparently thinking it was from the Telegraph. And then having to delete it. So the idea
sending all these rioters to the Falklands.
Yeah.
Yes, your red flags would be sparking immediately. And yet
Totally.
Elon Musk, the controller of Twitter, even retweeted that. So if the controller of Twitter can't work out the truth from not the truth, how can we expect Joe Bloggs to do it?
Totally. And that is the best example to everybody in the UK and across the world that, fake news exists. The executive of X has now fallen foul of his own, what he should be policing. So everybody should now wake up to the fact that, this social media platform isn't just a fact-finding machine. It isn't just a fact-pumping factory. It is something that is besotted with fake news, misinformation, and therefore everybody should now take a step back and think, OK, some of the things that I've seen on social media, it might not be what I thought it was.
I think we have to change the thinking on this. The wall between the virtual world and the real world has broken. Okay? We see how what is online then gets into our real world, almost always destructively. So we have to treat that in the same way as we would treat incitement to racist violence, sexist violence, misogyny. all the stuff that we have laws in the real world for, because that wall, which was thin enough, is now cracked.
I do wonder whether cancelling social media is the way to do it when you think that actually there was riots before there was social media. So do you not believe, Yasmin, that actually if there was a blackout, people that were passionate enough on these subjects to come out in force would find some other way?
No, listen, in the 70s, we had a whole spate of riots against fascists and Nazis.
And that was before social media.
I was on 3 of those marches, once when I was pregnant, and they were really, really horrible. There was no social media there. But what you didn't have is the extent we've had. They didn't spread like a fire. They just
What
didn't.
do you mean they didn't spread? They were smaller numbers, or they were just concentrated in one city, maybe just London, rather than being all over the country?
Yeah. And I actually, at the time, although it was a really hard time to be black or Asian, because racism was in your face then, Enoch Powell was very popular, the media behaved, the mainstream media behaved more responsibly. I think they didn't kind of enjoy...
Stoke it?
Yeah, they didn't enjoy the sensation of these things, and they were quite sober. We are where we are, and I do not believe that something man-made, like social media, which was man-made, cannot be tamed.
But the point, just very quickly, the point you made between the virtual world and the real world, reality, is a fantastic one. And that's why you've seen, I think, over the last couple of days in particular, government ministers and the police, Sir Mark Rowley and others, going out to the public to say, if you are posting, hate speech online, we will come after you just as we would if you are shouting hate speech in the streets.
And we have seen practical evidence of that already.
Exactly.
Somebody has been arrested for it. I am wondering, though, whether actually social media in general does need curtailing in the way that not only for organising riots like this, maybe we need to look even further. Have these riots been stoked because of the algorithm in creating either, you're either for or against, you have to pick a team, there's no sort of middle ground, and then the algorithm forms these sorts of echo chambers which just reflects back our own views, and then we're more likely to believe misinformation. Perhaps we need to crack down on that aspect rather than just blackouts.
Totally. I think that you've hit the nail on the head, because if you start talking, as you say, into that echo chamber and just listening to what you think you have a view of, and you just keep seeing the algorithm of post after post, of story after story for something that, grinds your gears.
This is, just so everyone knows, this is views from Walthamstow, I believe. This was anti-racist turnout protests, which is quite spectacular. I mean, you can barely see the pavement. There are so many people there, quite inspirational footage there. I just want to clear that up in case anybody thinks they were sort of part of the riots. They were not. So they are anti-racist protests. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, but you're absolutely right, because, what these people are demonstrating is obviously something that, is outside of what would be their social media algorithm. So, I use Twitter, I use X, but I follow all kinds of journalists, I follow all kinds of different opinions, because I want to get the information, and I want to see a balanced view, and I can make my own judgment. But
you're unusual in that.
Yeah, and we haven't had the time.
I've just eaten cricket. I mean, that's quite unusual, I suppose.
You're right. You're an unusual guy.
We haven't had the time. This thing, social media, came upon us, and in many ways it's a good thing. And in many ways it's a very dangerous thing. And of course we've got the bots apparently in Russia, who were some of them behind what happened, and so on. We haven't had the time to think about how to manage this phenomenon.
Is technology going faster than policymakers can make policy around it? Carly from South Yorkshire, what do we do about this situation if we don't have social media blackouts? How do we make sure that social media isn't used in this way in the future?
Hiya. I don't think it makes sense to have a social media blackout, because, to be honest, I think these thugs are just finding another platform to spread their hate. I mean, I live in South Yorkshire near to Rotherham, where the riots happened. And the only reason I knew about it was because of social media, so I at least had that information to stay away from that area. I think we should just prosecute people on social media who say hateful and racist things as if they were saying it out loud in the street. I don't think there should be any difference between them saying it online or in person.
So just tighten up the laws.
Yeah, tighten up the laws. I mean, it was heartwarming to see the anti-racist protest in Sheffield the other day. That I was really happy about that. But the riots, they have been stoked by social media. But I just think these racist thugs would find another way.
Carly, do you think though social media has encouraged them and empowered them because of the echo chambers they find themselves in? That on social media they just talk to themselves?
I do think it has, and I think on social media what I seem to have witnessed is that it's emboldened people to be racist, which is absolutely vile.
So how do we stop
that? People just
that?
seem to think it's acceptable. I think we just need to use the laws we've already got. And if you've been outwardly racist, you need to be prosecuted for it. As far as I'm concerned, it's just absolutely vile, and I just hate that our country's like this at the minute. It just really devastates me.
There's definitely be some very disappointing scenes, Carly. Thank you very much for your call. It was just interesting when you heard Carly say that she discovered, she learnt about the riots just down the road from her because of social media, and Carly, that meant Carly stayed away. The worry is that lots of people found out about the riots through social media and went to the location. Yeah. Pia from Fife, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, I agree with Yasmin. And not so much with Charlie.
Okay. That's okay. You're allowed to do that. What's your thoughts?
Well, we've let the beast out of the barn, so you can't kind of pick and choose with social media. Either you have a sort of like blanket, everybody can say what they want. And interestingly, do we now have this online safety bill? So how come nothing's been done?
Pia, it's a question that Yasmin's posed, and I'm not quite sure why it won't come into action until next year. There does seem like there's been a long gap there. But even if it does come into action, when you have social media and you have the algorithms that are in place now, I am not smart enough to work out how these algorithms work, and it would take somebody much smarter than me to work out whether they can be changed or not. But when you have the ones that are currently in place, they do form an echo chamber, and that does seem to have stoked the rift and stoked the anger. How do you stop that?
You're missing the point. If they've got algorithms to sell us shit, sorry, pardon my language.
Stuff, I think you meant.
If they got algorithms to carry on selling us stuff that we don't really need.
Yes.
So the minute you look at a kettle, and then any website you go after that, it keeps coming up on the sides with going, oh, look at this kettle.
Worryingly, sometimes you just have to say it, even than typing it into your phone or into your device. Yes, that you think that they'll have algorithms to give you a fairer outlook.
To sell us stuff. Therefore, they should have algorithms to shut this stuff down.
Very good point, actually.
And they're not using it, and they're not using it for good reason, because they want to stoke this nonsense.
So, okay, well that's interesting then, Pia. So, do you think that we can trust the social media companies then to do what's right? So then, what do we do? Do we just get rid of them?
Well, no. Well, if the online safety bill doesn't have any teeth, then this is no good to us. You know, like one of your panelists said, social media is good for certain things, bringing people together in countries that perhaps don't have a democracy or don't have the voice that's necessary. But if you think about all the child abuse and the misogyny and all the hate that goes on that people won't say face to face. Once upon a time, you had a videotape under a desk in the newsagents that got passed around of child abuse. Now this stuff goes out to millions of fellas who are into this stuff. And someone's posting it in Thailand or whatever.
You're articulating in rather graphic imagery of the ills of social media. But there are some benefits. Do we, and we don't, hold on, we don't trust the social media bosses. So do we just get rid of social media then in its entirety, never mind blackouts?
Yeah, maybe. Well, but what's the upside? The outside?
Well, the
bad side outweighs the good stuff.
Does it? The anti-racism protests, they were probably organised on social media.
We could have done that. We did that. I'm sure we can do that without social media.
Okay, all right. But shut down social media in its entirety? What do you think?
No, I just don't think you can, because for whatever the motivations that people have and however it's been stoked by social media, and I totally understand the role that's had to play, there is still a silent majority. There's always a silent majority of people who tend to be on the right side of the debate, who obviously stayed at home, who have an opinion, whether it's an informed opinion, whether you obviously denounce all the thuggery that's taken place, but you can understand maybe there's no justification for that, but there's an explanation as to why people feel aggrieved by maybe mass immigration or things like that. People will have an opinion, but largely the majority of people stayed at home. They didn't fuel the flames of the riotry and the bigotry that we've seen in this country. So people can have a view without being on social media. If we get too obsessed by social media, I think we miss the point of, I think it was David Cameron that once said that, Twitter and real life, it's not the same thing. And I think
But
that's
it is
still,
now.
I still think,
That's
that holds, I
exactly
still
what I
think that
mean.
holds true today.